A single janitor, exhausted from his night shift, gets a mysterious call at 2 a.m. The voice on the other end is desperate, but it's the wrong number. Everyone would have hung up, but what he did next, it changed his life forever. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and turn on notifications. Stories like this remind us that life's biggest turns happen when we least expect them. The wrong call. The fluorescent lights of the office building flickered as Ethan Carter pushed his mop across the marble floor for what felt like the 1,000th time that night. His shoulders ached. His knees protested every step, and the sharp scent of disinfectant clung to his clothes. But he didn't complain. Complaining didn't pay the bills. At 34, Ethan had learned that life rarely handed out favors. A single father to 7-year-old Lily, he worked 2 jobs just to keep her medicine covered and a roof over their heads. The janitorial gig was his nighttime hustle, quiet, thankless, but steady. During the day, he stocked shelves at a grocery store. Sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. The clock on his cracked phone read 1:47 a.m. when he finally clocked out. The Chicago streets were slick with rain as he trudged to his battered pickup truck, the cold seeping through his thin jacket. He cranked the heat, but the old engine only coughed out a lukewarm breeze. His apartment was a cramped 1-bedroom on the wrong side of town, but it was home. The moment he stepped inside, he checked on Lily, asleep in her bed, her stuffed rabbit tucked under her arm. The sight of her peaceful face was the only thing that ever made his exhaustion feel worth it. He barely had time to slump onto the couch before his phone buzzed, an unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. Ethan frowned. No one called him this late. Telemarketers didn't work these hours, and his few friends knew better than to wake him when he actually managed to sleep. He almost ignored it, but something, maybe instinct, maybe the ghost of past regrets, made him answer. A woman's voice, breathless and trembling, cut through the silence. "Please, I need help. The gate code isn't working." Ethan blinked. "Ma'am, I think you have the wrong number." No, you have to come. They're going to." A sharp noise, glass shattering. A muffled cry. Then the line went dead. Ethan sat frozen, the phone still pressed his ear. A wrong number. A stranger in trouble. Logic told him to let it go. He wasn't a cop. He wasn't a hero. He was just a tired janitor with too many problems of his own. But then he remembered the terror in that woman's voice. The way it had cracked on the last word. And worse. He remembered another voice, another night, years ago. His wife, Jessica, gasping for breath as the ambulance took too long to arrive. The way her fingers had clutched his, desperate, before they went still. He had promised himself back then that he'd never ignore a cry for help again. Ethan grabbed his keys. He didn't even know where he was going, but he had the last 3 digits of the caller's number and a gut feeling. A quick search led him to a gated community in the suburbs, Willow Lane Estates. Rich people. The kind of place where no one expected trouble. The drive took 20 minutes. Rain pounded against his windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up. His hands clenched the wheel, knuckles white. What if this is a mistake? What if it's nothing? But then he turned onto Willow Lane and saw the iron gate slightly ajar, a sleek black car idling crookedly in the driveway, its door hanging open. No one in sight. Ethan's pulse hammered in his throat as he stepped out into the rain. This wasn't just a wrong number. Something was very, very wrong. The mansion on Willow Lane. The rain soaked through Ethan's jacket within seconds, the cold biting into his skin as he approached the open gate. His boots splashed through puddles, the sound drowned out by the storm. The mansion loomed ahead, a sprawling estate with tall windows, most of them dark. Only a flickering light from the second floor hinted at movement inside. Ethan hesitated. This isn't your problem. Call the cops and walk away. But what if the woman was hurt? What if she didn't have time? He pulled out his phone, fingers hovering over 911, then stopped. A shadow moved behind one of the windows. Fast. Deliberate. This wasn't just a break-in. Whoever was inside wasn't here to steal. They were here for her. Ethan's grip tightened on his phone. He could still call for help. But by the time the police arrived, it might be too late. He made his decision. Moving low and quiet, He skirted the edge of the property, avoiding security cameras mounted near the front door. The side gate was locked, but the stone wall beside it was climbable. He hauled himself up, scraping his palms on a rough surface, and dropped onto the other side. The backyard was eerily still. A manicured garden, a pool covered for winter, a patio with expensive-looking furniture. No sign of the woman. No sign of whoever had been in that car. Then a sound, a muffled thud from inside the house. Ethan crept toward a set of French doors. One was slightly ajar, the lock broken. His pulse roared in his ears as he slipped inside. The interior was all marble floors and high ceilings, the kind of wealth Ethan had only seen in magazines. A shattered vase lay near the entrance, water pooling around scattered flowers. A struggle had happened here. He moved deeper into the house, ears straining. A whisper of movement upstairs. Ethan grabbed the closest thing he could use as a weapon, a heavy bronze bookend from a nearby table. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Step by step, he climbed the grand staircase, avoiding the creaky third step. The flickering light came from a room at the end of the hall. The door was half open. He peered inside. The woman, the heiress, was backed into a corner, her dark hair disheveled, one arm bleeding from a shallow cut. Her eyes, wide with fear, locked onto Ethan the second he stepped into view. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then her expression shifted from terror to confusion. "You're not security," she breathed. Ethan opened his mouth to respond. Tires screeched outside. The woman's face went pale. "They're back." Ethan didn't have time to ask who they were. Heavy footsteps pounded up the front steps. The front door slammed open. No time to hide. He lunged forward, grabbing the woman's wrist. "Is there another way out?" She nodded sharply, pulling him toward a servant staircase hidden behind a panel in the wall. They barely made it inside before the intruders reached the top of the main stairs. The narrow staircase spiraled downward, emerging into a dimly lit kitchen. The woman, Vivian, she'd said her name was, moved with practiced ease, like she'd done this before. "We need to get to the panic room," she whispered. Ethan followed her through a pantry, then down another short hall. Vivian pressed her palm against a seemingly blank section of the wall. A hidden door clicked open. Inside was a small, secure room, monitors displaying security feeds, a landline phone, and a first aid kit. Vivian locked the door behind them, her hands shaking. On the screens, two masked figures stalked through the house, overturning furniture, searching. "Who are they?" Ethan asked. Vivian's jaw tightened. "They work for my father's former business partner. He thinks I have something that belongs to him." "Do you?" She met his eyes. "No, but he won't stop until he's sure." Ethan exhaled, running a hand through his damp hair. He'd come here because of a wrong number. Now he was trapped in a panic room with a woman he didn't know, hunted by men who clearly didn't care who got in their way. Outside, one of the intruders picked up a chair and hurled it at a camera. The feed went black. Vivian's breath hitched. "They know where we are." Ethan tightened his grip on the bookend. They were out of time. The hidden truth. The air inside the panic room was thick with tension. Vivian's breath came in short, sharp gasps as she stared at the darkened monitor, where the camera feed had just died. The intruders were close. Too close. Ethan's mind raced. He wasn't a fighter. He was a janitor, a father, a man who fixed leaks and mopped floors. But right now, none of that mattered. The only thing that mattered was getting Vivian out alive. He turned to her, keeping his voice low. "Is there another exit from this room?" Vivian shook her head. "No, but there's a landline." She grabbed the phone, fingers trembling as she dialed 911. A busy signal. She tried again. Same result. "They must have jammed the signals," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Ethan clenched his jaw. Of course. These men weren't amateurs. They'd come prepared. A heavy thud echoed against the panic room door. The metal groaned under the impact. Vivian flinched. "They're going to break in." Ethan scanned the room, searching for anything they could use. His eyes landed on a first aid kit. Not much of a weapon. Then he noticed a fire extinguisher mounted on the wall. He grabbed it, hefting its weight in his hands. It wasn't much, But it was something. Another crash against the door. The frame splintered. Vivian's hand found Ethan's arm, her grip tight. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice thick with guilt. "Now you're trapped because of me." Ethan met her gaze. "I made the choice to come, and I'm not letting anything happen to you." The word surprised even him. He barely knew this woman, but something in her eyes, the same fear, the same desperation he'd seen in his own reflection for years, made it impossible to walk away. The door shuttered again. One more hit, and it would give way. Ethan made a decision. "Stay behind me," he ordered, stepping in front of Vivian. The door burst open. A masked figure filled the doorway, his eyes cold behind the black fabric covering his face. He raised a gun. Ethan didn't think. He acted. He yanked the pin from the fire extinguisher and sprayed a thick cloud of white powder directly into the man's face. The intruder staggered back, coughing, blinded. Ethan swung the extinguisher like a battering ram, slamming it into the man's chest. The intruder crashed into the wall, the gun clattering to the floor. Vivian dove for it, grabbing the weapon with shaking hands. The second intruder appeared in the doorway, his own gun raised. Time seemed to slow. Ethan braced himself. A gunshot rang out, but it wasn't from the intruder. The man crumpled, clutching his leg. Behind him stood an older man in a security uniform, his own gun smoking. "Mr. Holloway." Vivian gasped. The security guard, Holloway, nodded grimly. "I came as soon as I saw the breach in the system." Ethan exhaled, his body still thrumming with adrenaline. It wasn't over yet. Police sirens wailed in the distance. The first intruder groaned on the floor, still half-dazed from the extinguisher. Holloway kicked the gun away from his reach and cuffed him. Vivian's hands were still shaking as she lowered the gun. She looked at Ethan, her eyes wide. "You saved my life." Ethan shook his head. "We're not safe yet." Holloway nodded in agreement. "We need to get you out of here before more show up." Vivian hesitated. "We can't leave. Not until we know who sent them." Ethan frowned. "You said it was your father's business partner." "It's more complicated than that," she admitted. "My father, he left something behind. Something they're willing to kill for." The sirens grew louder. Holloway moved to the window. "Police are here, but we can't trust them either. Not until we know who's involved." Ethan ran a hand through his hair. This was spiraling out of control. All he'd wanted was to help. Now he was tangled in something far bigger than he'd imagined. Vivian touched his arm again, her voice steady now. "I need your help, Ethan. Just a little longer." He looked into her eyes and saw something he hadn't expected. Trust. And despite every instinct screaming at him to run, he nodded. Because sometimes the right thing to do wasn't the safe thing. And Ethan Carter had never been one to walk away. A life rebuilt. The first light of dawn crept to the blinds of the hospital room as Ethan sat by Lily's bedside, his callous fingers wrapped around her small hand. Machines beeped softly in the background, their steady rhythm a reminder of how close he'd come to losing her. Again, the events of that rainy night at Willow Lane felt like a fever dream. The gunshots, the panic room, the way Vivian had looked at him when she realized he wasn't leaving her side. But the bruises on his knuckles were real. So was the envelope in his jacket pocket. Lily stirred, her lashes fluttering open. "Daddy." Her voice was groggy from the pain meds. Ethan forced a smile. "Hey, sunshine. How are you feeling?" "My tummy hurts less." She reached for the stuffed rabbit on her bedside table, the one Vivian had brought yesterday, along with a stack of books and the promise of the best doctors. That was the thing about Vivian Lockwood. She didn't make empty promises. The door creaked open. Vivian stood in the doorway, her dark hair pulled into a messy bun, 2 coffee cups in hand. She looked exhausted. Beautiful, but exhausted. "Thought you could use this," she said, handing Ethan a steaming cup. He took it, their fingers brushing. "You didn't have to come." "Yes, I did." She perched on the edge of Lily's bed, smoothing the girl's hair. "And how's my favorite patient today?" Lily grinned. "Vivi, did you bring more stickers?" Vivian laughed, pulling a sheet of glittery unicorns from her pocket. Would I ever let you down? Ethan watched them, something tight unraveling in his chest. 3 months ago, he'd been a nobody, a janitor drowning in medical bills. Now he had this. Vivian caught his eye and nodded toward the hallway. Walk with me. Outside, the hospital hummed with morning activity. Nurses shuffled charts. A janitor? Christ, had he really only been that a few weeks ago? Mopped the floors. Vivian stopped by a sunlit window. The board approved the funding. Lily's treatment is covered. All of it. Ethan's throat tightened. I don't know how to thank you. You don't have to. She turned, the sunlight catching the gold in her eyes. But I do have something else for you. She handed him the envelope he'd been carrying around for days, the one he'd been too afraid to open. Go on, she urged. Inside was a deed. To a house. Not just any house. A cozy 2-story with a yard, in a neighborhood with good schools. Near the new children's hospital wing Vivian's foundation was building. Ethan's hand shook. Vivian, I can't accept this. You already did. She smiled. It's yours. Paid in full. No strings. He stared at the paper, the words blurring. A home. Stability. A future where Lily could ride her bike without worrying about medical debt. Vivian touched his arm. You saved my life, Ethan. Let me help you rebuild yours. And just like that night at Willow Lane, Ethan made a choice. He pulled her into a hug, the scent of her shampoo, something expensive and floral, filling his senses. Thank you, he whispered. Behind them, a nurse wheeled Lily into the hallway. Daddy, Vivi, look, I got a ride in the wheelchair. Vivian laughed, wiping her eyes. That's my girl. My girl. The words settled over Ethan like a promise. Maybe life wasn't about the hand you were dealt. Maybe it was about the people who showed up when the world turned dark. And maybe, just maybe, second chances came at 2 a.m. with a wrong number. This story proves that one act of courage can change everything. If this inspired you, hit that like button and share it with someone who needs hope today. And don't forget to subscribe, because everyone deserves a story like this.